Hey everyone, welcome back to Master of Spin with John Williams. Today, as promised, is my first official podcast titled The Phoenix Rises, The Resurrection of Ozzy Osbourne, and the final Black Sabbath show. Before I get to that, I just want to say thanks again for joining me today. And if you like the content, please go ahead and hit that like button. I welcome your comments. I would love for you to interact with me and let me know what your thoughts are as I'm moving along with my journey. And eventually, if you feel like subscribing to the page, I would appreciate that as well. So, some pretty monumental news takes place recently, and that news being the return of Ozzy Osbourne and the final Black Sabbath show. Black Sabbath, of course, from Birmingham, England. And before I get to the conversation about the show and why it is such a monumental event in the history of heavy metal music, let's talk a little bit about why Birmingham is such a focal point for the rise of heavy metal music. Certainly, America has some great industrial cities and some important industrial cities, cities like Milwaukee, Detroit, Pittsburgh. But, American industrial cities are shiny copper pennies compared to Birmingham. Birmingham, that area of England, has a 1400-year history. Birmingham itself was founded in 1166. And by the dawn of the 20th century, it was a manufacturing and industry based city that was one of the leaders of industries in England at that time. Because of that, when World War II broke out and Birmingham transformed its factory and industrial city into a munitions and war related uh, city, it was a target of the German Luftwaffe during the Battle of Britain, known as the Blitz. So during the Blitz between 1940 and 1943, Birmingham was raided 77 times. And in those 77 air raids, 2,200 civilians were killed, 12,000 homes were destroyed, 300 factories were destroyed, 200 other large industries were destroyed. And following World War II, Birmingham looked like many of the cities throughout Europe. It was a smoldering heap of rubble. With that said, the boys were born in 1948 and 1949, the boys being Ozzy Osbourne, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Tony Iommi. So being born in the aftermath of World War II, as children, they played in the rubble. They played in those burned out, smoked out buildings. And during their childhood, the city was being reborn into a modern city. So the sound of trucks and the sound of tractors and the sounds of hammering and the return of the industries and the soot and the dirt and the climate represented something that could only become heavy metal music. That is why Birmingham is such a center place. When they began to play their music, the sound coming out of their instruments replicated the sounds and the feeling that they had growing up in a city like Birmingham. The band got together in 1968. They had a couple different incarnations of the band before naming the band Black Sabbath and dropping that first great album on Friday, February 13th, 1970, and that is the Black Sabbath album. About 8 months later, they dropped Paranoid in the UK. They dropped Paranoid in the United States, I believe January or February of 71. And the rest is heavy metal and rock and roll history. I can remember the first time that I heard that Black Sabbath record. Now, I was blessed having a brother that was 4 years older than me. So he had a great record collection. And, when I was 12 or 13 years old in middle school, a lot of the music that was being played through the radio stations was pop music. Olivia Newton-John, Carpenters, um, eventually John Denver, bands like Bread, Seals and Crofts. Great music, but I was already being exposed to music because I'd go into my brother's room, stick on those headphones, and I was listening to stuff like John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, Muddy Waters, the Paul Butterfield Blues Bands, Creedence Clearwater Revival. 10 years after, the Grateful Dead. I heard that first Led Zeppelin album before I listened to Black Sabbath. So my music palette was already changing greatly. So I went to my brother's room, put on the headphones like I usually do, and I pulled out this album. And I remember that album cover. There's a debilitated stone facade farmhouse in the distance. It's got a couple holes in the roof, some moss on the roof, leaves. To the right is a big tree and it's emblazoned with orange leaves. So it gives you a sense of it being the fall or the autumn. Farmhouse is sitting on a stone foundation, like a stone wall that wraps around, and there's a pond or a river or some body of water in front of it. In the forefront, there's another tree trunk that's hollowed out. There's vines and bushes on the base of the record. The colors are kind of muted and accented, and there's a figure standing there in black with the hair, long hair. The skin is almost green, and it's human, but it's not human. It reminded me maybe of seeing Dracula. So I take that record out, I put it on the turntable, I drop that needle, and I'm hearing in the distance some rain and some thunder. There's a storm, and there's a clanging of a church bell. Ding. And the storm is coming closer to me because the rain and the thunder is getting louder. And it's getting louder, and the clanging of that church bell is getting louder and louder. And then it starts. Bow, wow, wow, bow, wow, wow, bow. And then the music dies down and it softens. It still continues. And then Ozzy. What is this that stands before me? Figure in black, which points at me. Turn round quick and start to run. Find out I'm the chosen one. Oh no, no! Bow, wow, oh my God, my mind is being absolutely blown. I listen to one song. I lift that needle up off the record, put the record back into its jacket, I put it in the case, and I walked out of the room as if I had done something wrong. Now, I was a good church going boy at this time in my life. I went to church every Sunday. I went to youth group every Wednesday. And I had this overwhelming feeling that I did something I shouldn't have done. I had never heard anything or seen anything like what I had just witnessed. Now, a couple days later, I went back into his room. I put the album back on with the headphones. I listened to the whole thing. And when I put it back, I noticed there was another Black Sabbath record. And this was the Paranoid record. So I pulled the Paranoid record out. I put it on the turntable. And all it took was War Pigs. I heard War Pigs. I heard that album from start to finish. I came in the next day, played it start to finish again, and I was hooked. And I was a Black Sabbath fan thereafter. I mean, a transformative moment in my young musical life because I knew I was at the precipice of something that hadn't happened before. The ironic thing about those first two Black Sabbath records was, the press, the music critics of the time, they blasted those records. Those two records were so far ahead of their time that they didn't know what to do and they didn't know what they were listening to. Of course, everybody would catch up to it years later when we see the huge heavy metal explosion that takes place in the 1980s, but critics at the time didn't get it. So they're going to lay down 9 studio albums. To me, those first 4 albums, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, Masters of Reality, and Volume 4 are just absolutely incredible. Substance abuse began to hit the band pretty good in the mid 70s. It wasn't only Ozzy Osbourne. All of the guys were pretty heavy into drugs and pretty heavy into substances. So, 9 studio albums. The last studio album comes in 2013, an album called 13 that had a great banger of a song called God Is Dead. 1970 to 1979, it's a pretty short-lived period. Of course, Ozzy Osbourne is kicked out of the band in 1979 because his substance abuse, his debauchery, his mayhem, and his behavior had made it so the band could no longer move forward with Ozzy. For many of us, it seemed like it was the death of Ozzy Osbourne, that we would not see Ozzy Osbourne again. But there it is, 1980. Sharon hooks up with them. Randy Rhoads, a guitar slinger, hooks up with them, and Ozzy drops that Blizzard of Oz album that is just an absolute banger, and goes on to have a 40-year solo career that is full of ups, downs, and in-betweens. Ozzy is without a doubt the most iconic figure in the history of heavy metal music, the history of hard rock music. Many stories of debauchery and madness. I'm not going to go into any of those here because they're all available and they're easy to find if you seek them out. One story that I think is worth mentioning takes place in 1981, and Ozzy and Sharon go to Epic Records to meet with the executives of Epic Records to kind of offer a peace offering. And Ozzy takes out a couple white doves, and he bites the head off of the first dove, and then he bites the head off of the second dove and spits it out on the table. These executives are speechless, and he gets the moniker as the Prince of Darkness. And there's going to be many stories that follow that event. Some of them are going to be true, some of them are going to be make believe, but it does give him this other than kind of quality that makes him the growing icon that he will become in the business. So a little bit about Black Sabbath. Again, I had mentioned they had 9 studio albums, several live recordings, and they had a monumental greatest hits package called We Sold Our Soul to Rock and Roll. Band sells 75 million records in their career. The Paranoid album sold 12 million records. Their songs are iconic, from Black Sabbath to Warning to Iron Man to War Pigs, Paranoid, Hand of Doom, Planet Caravan, Fairies Wear Boots, Children of the Grave, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, NIB, Sweet Leaf, Supernaut. I mean, there's just so many great songs. And again, in 2013, when they dropped that 13 album, they had a great one called God Is Dead. Ozzy Osbourne himself, a solo career from 1980 to 2022, 100 million records sold. Blizzard of Oz selling nearly 14 million copies. And then again, we've got Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Perry Mason, Mom, I'm Coming Home, Over the Mountain, Bark at the Moon, Shot in the Dark. Oh, just unbelievable amount of music. And again, Ozzy dropped his final record in 2022 called Patient Number 9. So Loudwire ranks Black Sabbath as the #1 metal hard rock band of all time. Ozzy, according to Loudwire, is ranked number 13th. There was a readers poll in 2016 with Rolling Stone magazine, and they ranked Ozzy number 3 behind Dream Theater at number 2. That's a shout out to my cousin Nick, and to Metallica on number 1. And all I can think of is in that time is that you had a new generation, maybe a second generation of metal kids. They understand the importance of Black Sabbath, but not really. They like Black Sabbath music, but now they're being experiencing these great bands that came in the wake of Black Sabbath. And mark my words, there would be no heavy metal future without that arrival of Black Sabbath at the time they did. So their sensibilities changed because, in my opinion, there cannot be any kind of list that does not have Black Sabbath as the #1 heavy metal band of all time. In Rolling Stone magazine's top 100 metal hard rock albums of all time. They have Paranoid at number 1. They have Black Sabbath at number 5. They have Ozzy's Blizzard of Oz at number 9, Black Sabbath volume number 4, and Ozzy's Diary of a Madman at 15. So in the top 100, 5 out of the top 15 records are Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne. Rolling Stone's top 100 songs includes 5 Sabbath and Ozzy songs in the top 20, and Loudwire places Ozzy Osbourne as the number 7 metal frontman of all time. I saw Black Sabbath for the first time in 1997 for the reunion tour, and it was an absolutely epic event. It was the entire original band. And I mean, I've seen some great concerts. I've seen some really great concerts, but an epic concert is mind-boggling. And it was one of those shows. The next time I saw them was a couple times in 2016 during their final go of shows. At that time, Bill Ward did not join the band, but they had this drum sessions master named Tony Clufuetos, who was a master, and his solo during Rat Salad was incredible during that concert. I saw those shows twice in 2016, and both of them with my 16-year-old son. One show at the Forum, and then an unbelievable show at the Hollywood Bowl that was just absolutely off the chart. Last time, I'd seen Ozzy a couple times, enjoyed those, but it was nothing for me like seeing a Black Sabbath show. The last time I saw Ozzy was in 2019 when Taylor Swift was getting an American Music Award in downtown Los Angeles. And my wife was a real big Taylor Swift fan, still is, so I was able to score some tickets. So we went to that show, and, the usual suspects of the time were performing. We saw Selena Gomez, we saw Ariana Grande, we saw Billie Eilish, Dua Lipa. Taylor Swift played about 20 minutes worth of music. Green Day was also on the show. But the highlight of that show for me, and I think for most of the people that were in the audience, is when Ozzy came out with Post Malone and Travis Scott and did Take What You Want. And it was an unbelievable scene as Ozzy was seated on a throne as they pushed it out, and then he stands up and they go into that song. And the audience clearly showed their major appreciation for Ozzy, Travis, and Post Malone at that event. So here we are at the precipice of this great gig that's going to take place July 5th, 2025 in Birmingham, England. And it's only fitting that it does take place in Birmingham, England. And it's a celebration of Ozzy Osbourne. It's a celebration of the most iconic figure in the history of heavy metal music. And I would argue that even kids today who might be listening to pop music, might be listening to other music, they have probably heard the name Ozzy at some point in their life. Joining Ozzy, of course, for this event are going to be bands like Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, Gojira, Hailstorm, Alice in Chains, Lamb of God, Zakk Wylde, Mastodon, and a host of others that are there to pay tribute and show their respect to the master himself, Ozzy Osbourne. Now, when the show was first announced, there was some scuttlebutt and some feedback and chatter online that was, I think, misdirected. And I want to talk about that briefly. First of all, there were people who said, it's terrible. That I tried to get tickets. I couldn't get tickets. The tickets were so expensive. I'm a real fan. And, there were people who were probably buying tickets and they're going to resell them and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I tried to get tickets for that gig because I was going to fly across the pond, and that was a show that I wanted to be at as well. But the tickets sold out very quickly. It took a couple hours, and all of the tickets were gone. I read a lot of scuttlebutt, and I heard some chatter online about, how dare Sharon Osbourne. The greedy witch is looking for one last final paycheck. The band wants to be paid one more time before Ozzy is in the grave, and that is just pure nonsense. First of all, it's a charity gig. And all the proceeds for the gig are going to go to local charities in Birmingham, a children's hospice, a children's hospital, the Acorn Children's Hospice, and Cure Parkinson's, all Birmingham charities. And if you would have looked, and just a short little Google search would have showed you that Ozzy and Sharon's net value right now is worth $220 million. I don't think they need the dough. And the rest of the band has pockets full of money also. So I don't think they need to do the dough anymore. You know, I remember seeing an interview with Ozzy once, and he said, the thing that I want more than anything in my life is to go out still playing music. And when they nail my coffin shut, I'm going to pop that coffin back open and I'm going to perform an encore. You know, Ozzy's been hit by Parkinson's disease and he's had debilitating back issues for many, many years that he's had surgeries on. Parkinson's has taken away his ability to walk, but it hasn't taken away his ability to sing. And Ozzy has been working his tail off to be able to get to this point, to do this one last show. He says he's going to do bits and pieces. He says he's not in any kind of condition to do a full Black Sabbath set, but he's going to do as much as he can. And when they bring him out on that throne and he goes into his thing, the crowd is going to go bonkers. And to be in that crowd, to be able to shine that love on the Prince of Darkness, to be able to show your appreciation, all of those bands, all of those fans. I hope they live stream it. I hope they pay-per-view it. I want to watch it live as it unfolds. I know I'm going to be able to see clips of it eventually. But again, it is such a huge and historic moment in heavy metal history. And I just want to say, you know what? To Ozzy, good luck. Thank you for all the years of music. I know I ran a little bit long today. I'm at 22 minutes and 39 seconds. But, you know, it's talking about Ozzy and Black Sabbath, so I had a lot to say. So here's to Ozzy and the boys. Good luck. Again, in the meantime, be kind to yourselves. Be good to your neighbors. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't let the darkness take away your light. Don't let the haters get you down. And as always, peace, love, and music.